Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, children of all ages, get your drinks ready for happy hour. So we're about to do a little behind the scenes action. Looks like audio's working all right. Let me double check that and make sure audio's working okay. It's a little happy hour. All right. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Let's do it. Let's do this thing. So it's the midday, afternoon, evening time, actually, Patriot Report. I'm the Old Humble Guy, and I started calling this, it used to just be behind the scenes, but I decided to start calling it a Patriot Report so we could talk about stuff going on in our world in the middle of the afternoon, the middle of the evening. I mean, all topics are on the table. We're going to talk about whiskey. We're going to talk about topics of the day. We can talk about the bombing in Iran if you want to. I don't really give a shit, but if you want to talk about it, we can. It's not our fight. It's not our monkey, not our circus, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to call it, however you want to characterize it. But we'll get to it. We'll just, we'll mix it all up. We'll do all the cool stuff. We'll do all the cool stuff and all the stuff that we do. I am the Old Humble Guy. Right now, I am boxing up and bottling up an order. Behind me, we are filtering some Special Reserve. In front of me, I am boxing up our straight whiskey, and in between bottling the Special Reserve and boxing the straight whiskey, I'm going to bottle up some Double Oak Rye. We're going to do 5 cases of rye, 5 cases of Special Reserve, 5 cases of our straight whiskey. They only need, I believe, 3 cases each of our straight whiskey and Special Reserve. But here's what we're doing right here. That's the work, the work section right there. Let's get at it. But first, a word. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I am the Old Humble Guy, Joe Brita. This is the Old Humble Distilling Company, and you are in my tasting room, and I have to ask, have you tried my delicious whiskey? Because if not, I've got a treat for you today, because we have 4 award-winning Texas whiskeys for you to try. First off is our straight whiskey, 90% corn, 10% malted barley, aged 5 years in used bourbon barrels and bottled at 90 proof. Next to it is our Special Reserve. We take a portion of the straight whiskey and put it back in new barrels to age it a second time. Gives it a little bit deeper color, a little bit darker flavor, a little bit oakier, smokier finish. Third on the list is our Boomtown Bourbon, our flagship bourbon, the first bourbon we've ever made. A true Texas small batch craft bourbon made in 50-gallon batches and aged in 5-gallon barrels. And finally, our Double Oak Rye, a true Texas rye sourced with grains from the Texas Panhandle, aged with extra oak staves to balance out that high rye flavor and give it a nice, clean, smooth finish. 4 award-winning Texas whiskeys, all available right here at the Old Humble Distilling Company and in finer liquor stores near you. Plus, you can go online, oldhumbledistilling.com. Go to shop online, and you can order yourself up a bottle there in 46 states across the country. Treat yourself to something nice. Treat yourself to something from Old Humble Distilling Company. Cheers and happy drinking. God, just looking at that video, it looks archaic already. We've replaced that whiteboard with an actual 72-inch TV. Yeah, things have been updated since then. I need to reshoot the video. Hell, I probably even lost 15 pounds since I shot that video. Maybe even 25. I can't remember when I shot it. But we'll get all that done. So what am I doing first? Well, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm doing first is putting a fresh new UPC code on my straight whiskey labels, because the straight whiskey labels that I had printed have the wrong UPC code, because what I told the print shop was that I wanted my labels for the straight whiskey. I'm redesigning the straight whiskey labels, and I want the new labels to look exactly like the labels for my Special Reserve. And what I meant by that was I want them to have the same paper, the same print style, the same font, the same, the same setup, but I wanted that setup to be overlaid on my straight whiskey, my Texas straight whiskey labels. But what they did is they took all of the elements from the Special Reserve and just copied them over. And me, I checked everything except the UPC code. So we've got a bad UPC code, which just adds a step to my bottling process, which is already a mostly manual process. But now it's an extremely manual process. Extremely manual. Anyway, so hey, Old Humble guy, why are you doing a midday Patriot report these days? Well, that's a great question. Glad you asked. Happy to answer it. So here's what's up. I oftentimes, not infrequently, I don't know if it's often is necessarily a word for it, but not infrequently, I like to join other people's forums, discussion forums. You know, those panel shows where there's like 5 or 6 people on the show. I like to join those shows. And what I've found increasingly is I am outnumbered. I'm a minority voice of reason among these people because I have my set of values. I'm a newly minted 50-year-old man. I have a set of values. I grew up in a country that believed in a certain set of values. I didn't always, well, I thought I always shared these values with the country, but I am what you would call a classically conservative individual. I do, in fact, believe in limited government. I do, in fact, believe in individual rights. I do, in fact, believe in fiscal conservatism, if you will. These are the values and principles that I grew up with. Of course, I also have steadily watched as the fiscal conservatives that had been people that I could, oh, hey, who's this? Connected Investors, Inc. It's an app in the App Store. They are, did I get disconnected? What the frickety frick? Come on. What's going on? I am not connected to my LAN, LAN, local area network connection. There it is. I am working off Wi-Fi, which is dangerous. All right, so this is Google advertising on the channel. Thanks, Google, for the extra nickel that you're offering me. Anyway, we're about to switch over to the network. There we go. We switched over to the network. Improved that connection, baby. Woo! We're connected via terra firma. Anyway, somewhere around 2012, I'd say, the National Conservative Party, the Republican Party, lost its entire fucking mind. They gave up on fiscal conservatism. They gave up on social conservatism, and they started to move towards a more I don't really know the word for it. More, a less principled ideology. Let's put it that way. Started moving towards a less principled ideology. Sunflowers in the house. Cheers. So me, with my conservative values, steadily watched the Conservative Party just lose its entire fucking mind. That was progressively, starting probably, like I said, probably around 2012-ish. And here in Texas, we saw the results of that as the governance of Texas steadily started circling the drain and racing towards the bottom. You had a party which was more xenophobic, more anti-immigrant than ever before, more opposed to women's rights. And I was wondering, what on earth is going on with this? What on earth is happening to this party? Because they're no longer, I mean, it was no longer principled conservatism. It was military budgets ahead of everything, fear-mongering about, George W. Bush kind of started this back in, I want to say 04, when they tried, 06, when they tried to do the first immigration reform. He was stomping around going, oh, we've got terrorists coming across our southern border. And he tried to do an immigration reform, but he pounded this drum about terrorists coming across our southern border so much and for so long that they could not get a comprehensive immigration bill done. It became a third rail all the way back in 04, 06. Sunflower, there is such a thing as conservative values. There used to be such a thing as conservative values. And this was stuff that was historically held conservative values, not the neo-libertarian psychopathic conservative values. And that's what happened around 2012, 2010-ish, I want to say, 2010, with the rise of the Tea Party. What happened with the rise of the Tea Party is the Libertarian Party captured the Republican Party. And it ceased to be the traditional conservative values party and became this neo-libertarian party that wanted to suffocate the baby in the crib, so to speak. Choke the, what was the phrase they would use? Starve the beast. They wanted to starve the beast. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've got one too many, or one too few, a bottle in that row. That was their whole philosophy. Starve the beast, starve the beast, starve the beast. And we had hints of this back in 92 with George H.W. Bush, when he had the audacity to raise taxes on wealthy people. He had the audacity to raise taxes in order to try and balance the budget. And the revolt against George H.W., when he raised taxes, and it cost him the presidency because he was fiscally responsible. But fiscal responsibility had gone from trying to balance the budget to only ever cutting taxes, because Ronald Reagan cut taxes. So the solution to the problem was going to be to cut taxes, because Ronald Reagan cut taxes. So let's cut taxes. Ronald Reagan cut taxes, and it solved the problem of 1979. So let's cut taxes because it'll solve every single problem forever and ever. Amen. Are the Texas Republicans going to get 10 Commandments in public schools? They are trying to get the 10 Commandments in public schools, because God knows when you have a gunman walking the halls of your school, you need to be sure that you know not to create effigies to false gods. Fucking idiots. See, that's my point. Like, they used to have these very principled values, and that was not a principled value of the conservative party. Religion in schools was not a principled value of the conservative party. Yes, they held their faith. Just tripped on my phone cord. They held their faith true. That's always been a part and parcel of. Well, it hasn't always been part and parcel of the conservatives in our government. That is a 1970s. That's a relatively modern creation. 1970s is when that became a thing. I need to go over there real quick. Don't mind me as I go off camera to grab a thing that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That was one of Ronald Reagan's inventions when he joined forces with the moral majority and the conservatives, Christian conservative right wing, in 1976, I want to say. In his original challenge, was it 1976? I think it was 1976 when Carter won the presidency. Reagan had challenged Ford, I think it was 76. It might have been 72 when Reagan challenged Ford. I have my years off. Reagan's original challenge for the presidency weakened, I want to say it was Ford, but it wouldn't have been 76 for Ford because that was Carter's year. I guess it was 76 because Gerald Ford was Nixon's successor, and he was damaged by Reagan when Reagan ran a primary against him, and that allowed Carter to win. But here's the thing. Carter was considered a Southern conservative. That Carter was a liberal is a relatively modern invention. He ran as a law and order, crime and punishment, Southern conservative Democrat. He was more liberal in his actual policies and actual governance than he was when he ran as a candidate. And that's just to say that his party was probably more liberal. I don't know, in the 70s we still had the 70s was post Southern strategy. The late 70s, the early 80s was post Southern strategy. And I am not as well versed in 1970s as I am in the years following because I was not hardly alive in the 1970s. I was just a wee baby. But this religious Christo-fascism strain of Republicans is a relatively modern creation. A modern creation in the same way that most of what our politics are a modern creation and a gross and drastic diversion from historically American values. Or at least half of our politics are a gross distortion of American values and diversion from American values. What you saying, my sunflowers? Yes, I know Carter was president in 79, but he was elected president in 76. He was still president in 79. Anyway, abortion was not a big deal in the early 70s. It was mostly settled, and it became an issue with the moral in the 80s trying to claw back those rights. Hell, most of Ronald Reagan's presidency was an effort to claw back the rights and institutions of the 1940s. Oh, we got another advertisement on my phone here. Who are we advertising for now? Connected Investors. What the frick? Go away. Where's my, did I get kicked off? No, I'm still streaming. Where's my damn? Your Uncle Bob says Jimmy Carter was the worst president. My dad says Jimmy Carter was overwhelmed as president. Both of those things may actually be true. Jimmy Carter's, there were so many events that happened during Jimmy Carter's presidency that it's entirely possible, entirely reasonable that he was overwhelmed. But he also had huge victories as a president while he was in office. And I don't want to do a deep dive on his presidency because I'm not particularly well-versed. Oh, no. I am not particularly well-versed in the Carter presidency. But this is bad. This is an extreme leak. But I can address this. Not terrible. Not terrible, just not great. Ugh. The cool thing about filtered whiskey is you can just dump it right back into the barrel and have it go some more. Ugh. That's just going to get filtered twice. Ain't nothing wrong with that. It's working a little harder than I like it to, but we're doing fine. We're doing fine. We're doing fine. All right, anyway. No, I'm not, like I said, I'm not well versed in the failures and successes of the of the Carter presidency. It really was before my time. I am much more well versed in the successes and failures of the post-Carter presidency. But if you also look at, it was a transitional time, I suppose, in our economic development as a nation. It's going to have to be another day because I'm going to have to educate myself more about what went on. I know that things weren't great, but things weren't bad enough for him to not be reelected. Ronald Reagan won the election in large part due to subterfuge. I had a piece of paper. Here it is. Double oak rye. I need 3 cases of double oak rye, so I'm going to go ahead and make 5. 2, 3, 4. Because I need a couple of cases here at the distillery anyway. And I have more whiskey in process for my rye. So, because I've got some cask strength stuff that I'm working on. So as long as I've got the cask strength barrel that I'm digging product out of, I can still make more. 2, 3, 4. And I've got 135 bottles to a level of bottles, and I'm going to need about 90 of them. So I'm going to also be ordering another set of bottles in the next 24 to 48 hours. 2, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So anyway, why am I doing a Patriot report now instead of just behind the scenes? Because I go onto these forums with people, and it is becoming increasingly clear that I do not share basic common values with the people that I'm on these forums with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 30 bottles. And by basic common values, I mean core American principles. Like, these people have lost the sense of what it is, of what we used to share as Americans. We don't have common core principles that we share as Americans anymore. 3, 4, 5, 6. And this time of year, being on the edge of Independence Day, this is the time of year when we should be reminded of those core principles. 5, 6, 7. These are principles that we shared as a people before we had a country. Our country being created with the adoption of the Constitution in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I need 10 rows of 6. When we adopted the Constitution in 1789, it's when we officially had a country. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. Because before that, we were a confederation of colonies, of states. We were not a unified country. That was 1783 till roughly 1789 when the Constitution was adopted. George Washington was selected, really, by the Electoral College, and we officially had a country. The last state to join the Union, the last colony to join the Union, was Rhode Island. Fun fact. Rhode Island was the last state, the last colony to join the Union as a state. All right. And they only joined the Union because they were being threatened. Oh, Mr. Jiggs is in the house. Cheers, Mr. Jiggs. They were being threatened with, like, basically being entirely cut off from the economy of the United States. They're like, well, we don't want to be cut off. So they joined the Union. Connecticut had aspirations, territorial aspirations, of stretching their territory all the way across the continent and waged war against Pennsylvania in an attempt to, in the early days, in an attempt to establish that claim. Because Pennsylvania, if you are familiar with the map, is notably in the way of Connecticut. And it's in between Connecticut and the Pacific Ocean. Anything new with the business? There's a bunch of stuff new with the business. Okay, so new with the business. We've got air conditioning in the tasting room. The tasting room is, we're moving into the next phases of building out in the tasting room, which is going to be putting in a painting and finishing the walls and putting in a door for my office so that I can run the AC in my office and the tasting room at the same time. A few more things around here with panels and tape and paint and such. We are working on expanding into Oklahoma and possibly Louisiana. We're still available online. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of new stuff with the business. I'm working on I'm working on a new bourbon that will be available possibly in the fall, but certainly in the spring. And we are about to launch our radio advertisement campaign here in the Houston market, which is super duper exciting for me, not for you, because you're in Chicago, you're not going to hear it. But if you are lucky enough to hear ESPN radio online, you'll be able to hear my ads as they run in your market occasionally. Jigs, I would not stop you from getting a couple of cases. If you came to my shop and asked nice, I would set you up. So these are going to be rye whiskey. I'm going to do 5 cases of rye whiskey and then 5 cases of special reserve. I've got tastings this weekend, which will probably take up some of this inventory. But the advertisements on the radio are intended to, the goal for the ads on the radio are going to be to increase purchasing on the shelves in retails, outlets, and drive a little bit more traffic here to the tasting room. Next, before I'm going to do about a case of these, fill up about a case of these, and then I'm going to finish proofing my special reserve here. I'm going to take a measurement real quick and find out where our proof stands. And then I'm going to split. I think I need to split this batch into 2 batches of 25 gallons each, and then add 3.5 gallons to each, because that is a 53-gallon barrel, and I need 57 gallons of volume in order to finish that batch. So, Connected Investors app. Once again, go away. This Connected Investors app is pissing me off because it's kicking me out of my of my broadcast here. I'm losing the feed every time it. Like, I appreciate the ad, but damn it, their ad is messed up and it keeps kicking me out of the show. I don't know if it's doing the same thing for you guys, but that's what it's doing to me, and it's kind of pissing me off. But, you know, I appreciate the income. Thank you. What meager income it is. I think it's like 75 cents. Okay, so I'm going to turn this camera here so you can kind of see what I'm doing. All right, so what I'm doing over here, I'm working in these two containers right here. I've got to rinse this one out real quick to make sure that there's no residual stuff. Can you see the door? No, you can't see the door. Tough cookies. I'm going to the door. You can't see me. But all I got to do is rinse it out to make sure there's no residual char left behind. Because I don't want, I've already filtered out the barrel char. I don't want any more barrel char left behind that I have to filter out again. So what I'm going to do, in order to split this batch, is I should have about 50 gallons in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my handy dandy bucket. Use my handy dandy bucket that has my measurements on the side, volumetric measurements, specifically gallons. See? Gallons. So I'm going to pull out 5 of these. In my very scientific method right here. That is about 5 gallons. If we look at the mark on the side, where's the mark on the side? Mark on the side, it is just a hair shy of 5 gallons, but that's no problem. Because ultimately what I'm trying to do is make sure these are both even. So that's 5. That'll be 10. This will be 15. That'll be 15. And this will be 20. That's 20. And this will be 25. Now, if all my measurements and calculations have been correct, these should be 2 equal, roughly equal volumes. Once everything settles down, they'll be very close to equal. So this is 25 gallons right now here on my left. It looks like I overestimated the volume that we had by just a couple of gallons. That's where we're at there. No, we're just about even. That's right about 25 gallons each. So not a problem at all. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go over here to my handy dandy computer Well, no, I don't even need to go to my handy-dandy computer. I know exactly how much water needs to be added to these. About 3.5 gallons need to be added to each one. And then I'm going to filter both of them into both of them. I'm going to filter the one, and then as I'm bottling the one, I will filter the second one into the first one. So what I should have is about 57 gallons total. I should have about 57 gallons total. Hey. Of which I will be removing 60 bottles divided by 5, 12 gallons? I'll be removing about 12 gallons because a bottle is a fifth of a gallon, and 60 bottles would be 1/5 of 60 gallons. 1/5 of 60 gallons is 12 gallons. So of this, I'll be removing about 12 gallons, which should put me down to about 45 gallons, which will all fit inside of one bucket. But I will begin the filtration process of one set of one barrel into this one, which has some residual special reserve, just a few gallons, not many, just a couple of gallons are in there. So this barrel will go into this barrel that has a little bit of special reserve left behind. And then as this one gets depleted, or as this one goes in here, then I'll begin bottling it up. And once we, as the bottling progresses, space will be opened up, and then I'll start filtering that one in to fill up the extra, the additional space. So there you go. Could you send me a recording of your ad? I'd love to hear it. I see no ad. Yes, absolutely. I will send you a recording of the ad once I hear it, because they'll send me audio of the ads, of the ESPN ad. It will be recorded by a guy named Brian something or another. I can't remember his last name, but I talked to him just earlier today. Brian McDonald, who is a local whiskey enthusiast, lives just down the street, not too far from me, as a matter of fact. And then one of the things that we're going to be doing later on, as this ad continues to air, is some live remote shoots from, or live remote radio spots. They do their afternoon live remotes, radio remotes, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They do that stuff, and we're going to do probably 3 of those, one a month, here at the Old Humble Distilling Company. So that's very exciting. Very exciting little partnership that I am. Let me move this camera so you can kind of see what I'm doing still. There we go. Back to where we was. Here we are. Give me a vertical shift. There we are. All right. I wish I had my old camera, my old Canon, my Canon Rebel iOS, but the the connector broke. So in order to repair it, I would have to I'd have to get a whole new fucking motherboard inside that thing. And that whole board costs $500, the same cost as a new fucking camera. So Nope. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So anyway, yeah, we got some cool stuff going on. We got some events coming up. We have a really cool event shaping up starting July 4th, my favorite holiday. We're kicking off the epic scavenger hunt adventure, the Boomtown Bourbon Scavenger Hunt and Adventure on July 4th. I have challenge coins coming in the mail, some cool little gold coins. That if you find the bourbon in all the bars that we have it at that are participating in this promotion, because we've got, I think we're in like almost a dozen bars here locally, but the bars supporting the promotion, there's like 6 of them. So if you find the bourbon in all 6 bars, get your book stamped or signed or whatever. Get your book stamped, get your book signed, and then come back to the distillery showing that you went to all 6 places and you found all 6 bars. Then you will get your challenge coin. And there's limited participation. There's only going to be like 75 people who get the challenge coins. There's only so many coins available, which means I'm probably going to have to print up like 200 of those books. That shit gets expensive. But print up the books, couple hundred of those books. Saved a significant amount of money by just doing 6 bars instead of 10. Because that's like a whole another page of printing. There we go. These are all sideways. I have made an error. I'm going to have to turn every single one of these on their side. Every single one of these is sideways. So yeah, anyway, the idea, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the idea of doing of rebranding this as the Patriot Report is partly so we can take the word patriot back from these savages that are running around with their fucking Confederate flags and truck nuts and their neo-libertarian anti-American nonsense. And I say anti-American because the values that they express are not American values. They're more fascistic than democratic. There it is again. This fucking ad. Look at that. Connected investors. It just like kicks me out of the live stream entirely. I wonder if I can tell it to quit giving me this ad. Block it. Stop seeing this ad. Sorry, guys. Y'all messed up. I don't want to see this ad on my feed anymore. Keep kicking me out of my own. And now I got a Fubo. I'll take Fubo. Fubo is good stuff. I've had several subscriptions to Fubo. As long as they don't kick me out of my damn stream. Dorks. I mean, I'm sitting here watching a video on my phone, and an ad comes on, and then kicks me out of the video. Come on, man. That ain't cool. That ain't cool at all. Okay, time to start filtering the Special Reserve. Or at least begin the process of getting the Special Reserve ready to filter. It's going to go into here. And it's going to go back into there. So this needs to go back here. Well, shit. I painted myself into a corner, I see. Oh no. The consequences of my actions. They are profound and terrifying. Oh no. Ugh, there we go. All right. So I soak those pads, replace these pads. I'm going to go back there. It's easier for me to do all this stuff from back there. Americans are confused in political terms. I do a lot of work for one dude. Well, thanks. What does a challenge coin get? A challenge coin is just a trophy. And I'll probably buy you a drink. I mean, if you go through the process and you come back and you redeem your, you get the coin, if you redeem your book and get the coin and do all that stuff, I'll probably buy you a drink. I'll have a shot with you because I want to hear the story. I mean, you just went all over Humble. You solved 6 riddles, at least 6 riddles. You went all over Humble. You solved 6 riddles. I want to know what bar had the best story. I want to know what bar had the best cocktail. I want to know what, I want to know what you did to get where you were to finally finish the challenge. I mean, it sounds fun. I'm going to do it at least once because, I support my partners, bar partners. Get it? Partners. So, yeah, that's what the challenge coin gets you. It gets you a story. It gets you a free shot of whiskey. It gets you notoriety, praise, and a pat on the back. Good, buddy. I mean, Jesus, what do you want? It's a one-of-a-kind challenge coin. It's a pretty cool little trophy. All right, you're going to go in here. You're going to go right here. And doing a lot of work for one guy's, I believe it's what's necessary to build a business. I've got other people working now for me. I have a salesman who does outside sales. His name is Jody. He's been in here before while I've live streamed. He's chatted on the air a few times. I want to do a podcast with him, but working out the details of when I'm available and he's available at the same time is proving to be more challenging than we thought it would be. Because I'm like, I'm just gonna turn on my camera and fire away, dude. And he's like, we gotta have plans. Like, what the fuck are you talking about plans? Like a script? I don't do a script. What do you think I am? Some kind of well-prepared actor or some shit? Fuck that. Just let it rip, daddy. All right, you go in there. You go in here. Fire away. All right. Whiskey's moving through the pipe. Whiskey's hitting the intake nozzle. Whiskey's flowing. Oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. Pressure is high, but not bad. This is not great, but we should be okay. I'm just going to have to shut it down probably in about 30 minutes to let it rest. But that's okay because I've got about an hour's worth of work to do over here. We've got good flow rate going out. Everything looks optimal. We're going in the right direction. I hope one day you can see the how many customers do I get an average month in the tasting room. Hey, cheers, Josh. In the tasting room in an average month, we get about 100 customers going through. And I want to get that doubled to the point where we get about 100 transactions. Not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Because the average purchase is from 2 people. It's one person making 2 purchases. Or 2 people making 1 purchase, rather. They come in groups of between 2 and 4. So the average purchase is 2 people buying 2 bottles. So the average purchase is from 2 people. So we get 50 people coming through. We have 25 transactions. And right now we're averaging about 35 to 50 transactions because we have about 100 people coming through the shop in a given month. So the goal is to get that up to about 100 transactions, which would be about 200 or so people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be 10 across, 6 deep. I could make it 8. Well, 8 deep is not divisible by, is not a multiple of 60. I've discovered lately that my thinky voice, when I start to furrow my brow and really think about things, I sound like George W. Bush. Anyway. This is probably the most bottling that I've done in a single day, because usually I do about 5 cases a day. I kind of keep the workload manageable by doing about 5 a day, because I don't need to do 10 or 15 or 20 cases a day usually. But today, specifically, because we have this order, it's just as easy for me to do 5 cases as it is to do 4 or 3. For the special reserve, this is a specific order for 3 cases of 5 cases of Texas straight whiskey, 3 cases of double oak rye, and 4 cases of special reserve. I don't have any. I have 4 bottles of double oak rye in the tasting room right now. So I'm making 2 extra ones to have in the tasting room. And I have 0 cases of 0 bottles of straight whiskey in the tasting room right now. So I'm going to make 5 cases of special reserve and keep a couple cases back. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 2 more rows. Keep a couple cases back of the special reserve so that I'll have some whiskey in the tasting room. I don't need to keep high volumes of inventory on the floor, but I do like to have boxes on hand for when an order does come in. I'm ready to fill that order. So I usually get a day's notice. We get the purchase order come in, and then I'm ready. I let them know, like, the truck can come in 2 days. I'm usually 2 days away from having a full order ready to go. We are playing around right now with some possible expansion options with new distributors and getting product on shelves in multiple new stores. So when that happens, if that happens, my production will significantly increase so that instead of doing 5 a day, I will likely be doing 10 a day and have a facilities assistant here to help me out with all the futzing around and stuff that needs to be done here in the shop. And that is probably now ready for me to start pulling out of there. So I'll be able to finish the process with my double oak rye and start pulling product out of the bottling barrel for the special reserve. It's all a very methodical process. It's a very manual process. I'm still a small shop. I'm not a factory by any stretch of the imagination. My stills are fully operational, fully functional. Everything, every bit of the work that needs to be done by a distillery can be done by me in this shop. And I am fully capable of having a team of about 6 people working simultaneously here with me. Which makes for a really fun afternoon. If I've got a truly large order, 50 cases, let's say, and I've got to rock out, well, hell, even 20 cases. If I've got to rock out an entire barrel, I do the proofing and filtering and all this stuff on one day, and then the next day, I can have my crew doing all the bottling and labeling while I do the filtering, proofing of the next stuff the next day. And in a perfect world, that's where we'd be at, where I'm doing, 20 cases, rocking out 20 cases a week, 20 cases a day, rather. And then turning around and going and doing 20 cases on Monday and Tuesday, then turning around and going out and selling those cases on Wednesday and Thursday. The truck shows up on Monday, picks up the stuff we did the week before. The thing is, when we do 20 cases right now, usually it's 5 cases of each of my 4 labels, which is extremely inefficient. I'd rather do 20 cases of each label. So I've got to figure out a way of getting ahead on of that production and those orders, so we can do, at the beginning of the month we'll have 20 cases of everything. And then they can work their way through that over the course of the month, and then each week we do another 20 cases of each product. Another barrel gets emptied. Because a barrel is about 20 cases, between 17 and 22 cases. So each one of these barrels that I have back here had been 20 cases of product. And as it just so happens, we had 6 barrels of product come in here at the beginning of the year, and we have worked our way through, we had 10 barrels of product come in here at the beginning of the year, and we have worked our way through about half of them. And we're about to have to reorder more product. So things are kind of moving in the right direction. Things are going progressively. Things are getting progressively better. We haven't completely recovered and made our way back to where we were pre-pandemic, but we are no longer suffering the effects of post-pandemic shortages and price spikes. That was done for, I want to say, early 2024, late 2023, when the shortages and price spikes were done being a problem. And then, just in time for us to really start moving forward, the national embarrassment decided to put a tariff on everything. So the price of our bottles is probably going to be about 10 to 25% higher than it was last year, which is pretty fucking annoying when you're a small business, because I don't get to pass that price on. because I do not have, I don't have market control where I can just raise my prices. I'm not small businesses aren't market leaders. We don't get to do that. But I also don't aspire to be a small business forever. I'm working on breaking out of that. What about the tariffs? The tariffs, the production facility for Owens, Indiana, the glass company that makes our bottles, is in Mexico. And my bottles come through Mexico, or from Mexico through Laredo, Texas. And I used to drive down to Laredo and pick them up, but now I do not have time to do that, which is a good thing. And the time that I spent in the truck is not worth the savings that I get by doing it myself. It costs about $800 to between $600 and $800 to hire a truck, and to do it myself costs about $600, give or take. Well, I'm sorry, the truck costs $300, and then additional gas costs another couple $100, because Laredo is a long ways off, and it costs a lot of gas to get from here to Laredo and back. So it costs about $500, give or take, to drive a truck from here to Laredo and back to pick up an order of bottles. So I can save usually about $150 on the low end, $350 on the high end, but it also costs me an entire day of doing stuff. A day of talking on the phone, making orders, working on my website, ads, all that shit. So, like, my time is worth at least $200. So on the low end, I figure my time for a day. So on the low end, the delivery charge of like $600 is well worth it in order to have myself a day and have a professional delivery company come with their truck and their their lift gate, so they can unload the bottles and I don't have to worry about all that crap. So that's the biggest challenge. That's what I used to do. I don't do that shit anymore. It is actually now the amount of work that I'm doing, that I need to be doing, is actually more valuable than me being able to just take that day and drive to Laredo and back. I mean, there's a certain amount of romanticism of being in the truck, making the trip down to Laredo, being in the truck, rumbling down the highway the whole time. There's a certain romance to it, but that romance is expensive as shit. And not really worth the price of admission anymore. There was a time. But that time is long gone. And now, once this order goes out, I'm going to probably spend the next 2 or 3 weeks cleaning, doing a deep clean through here to get some shit organized, because I'm going to have barrels being converted into tables. I'm going to have boxes being cleaned up and cleaned out, bottling up some gin to get that off the floor and out of the way. There's a bunch of stuff that needs to get done in here. Yes, sunflowers. I do hire. I have a delivery company that picks it up and brings it to me. That way I don't have to. That way I don't have to make that trip anymore. And the cool thing about delivery companies is, I can rent that truck for a day and it cost me like $300, whatever. They own that truck. So the reason it's cheaper for them is because they're picking up 6 loads down in Laredo and then delivering, 4 different ones. There's just 6 loads in Laredo, 2 or 3 loads elsewhere. They all go to a central processing site, and then they set up a route, and I'm one of 10 stops on a route, and they just come and deliver it whenever they get the chance during that day. I don't have to worry about anything slipping or falling or damage to the product or anything like that. These are professional delivery guys. They are insured. They are capable. They just show up while I'm doing work. They say, hey, you that guy? I'm like, yep. You want this thing? I'm like, yep. Where do you want it? Right there. And then they just back up the truck and beep, 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 drop it down and vroom, drive off. Just like that. And the whole time I am working on an event or a website or some graphics or bottling stuff or filtering stuff or sweeping the damn floor or whatever the hell else needs to be done. Accounting, more accounting, more accounting. Actually, over the next 5 or 6 weeks, that's probably going to be taking up more time than anything else, is sitting down and doing my books, getting them caught up for this last quarter. So anyway, what's going on fun in the world? Anything exciting? We're going to have our July 4th extravaganza. Probably going to do our annual show on July 4th, pre-recorded video, where we read the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. Be it resolved. Blah, 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 blah. I really do want to do a whole show talking about the 14 facets of modern fascism. How you know you're descending into a fascistic state? Because I did this once before, where we talked about how you save democracy and the risks to democracy. And in a capitalist economy, all the fascists running around, they're like, oh, communism, communism, communism. Watch out for communism. Ted Cruz is out there talking to Tucker Carlson, being all like, I hate communism. Communism, blah, 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 blah. Like, there is zero risk, at least in modern times for sure, but there is zero risk of the American economy slipping into a communistic style economy. And socialism and communism are not the same thing. That's very important to understand and know. Communism is a different thing. Socialism is a deal where there is government control of public resources, but not government control of corporations. Government doesn't own the corporations. Government is in control of certain public resources and provides certain services. Like, fire departments, public schools, public housing, medicine, hospitals, roads. These are all post office. These are socialistic programs. Social Security, it's in the title, Medicare, Medicaid. It's generally understood to be kind of a social safety net. And it's not pure socialism. It's pure socialism. I don't know if there is such a thing as pure socialism. Is there a place where there's pure socialism? The Vatican is a theocracy, so is Iran, but Iran is a capitalistic economy, in an autocratic, theocratic state, or semi-autocratic, theocratic state. It's an Islamic republic, but a parliamentary theocracy. You've got China, which is a communist state with a market economy. Where would you have a socialistic, where there's not government control, where there's a private economy, but I don't think there is a pure social. There's socialistic places like Denmark and Netherlands and Sweden, the Scandinavian countries, where they consider themselves democratic socialists. I guess that's as close as you get in the modern day telling. It's summer concert time. Thursday nights I go with my middle brother, sister-in-law, and others to the park. Great live local band. Soul Asylum's coming. That's dope as shit. You need to learn the difference between living as socialist and democratic socialist. All right. We are done here. Let's get you in there. You know what? I'm going to actually shut this down for about 30 minutes. Give it a chance to cool off, because it's been chugging along pretty much nonstop this afternoon. This guy can go over here. And I actually would have probably had this done about 3 hours ago had I not been doing other stuff, ordering supplies, researching mail campaigns, blah, blah, blah. Like, I've been busy all afternoon and all morning. And I didn't get started on this stuff till probably 3 o'clock. I'd have been done by 6 had I been able to get started around 11 like I wanted to. But hey, them's the breaks sometimes. Anyway, yeah, I think you're right. Sunflowers. I mean, Americans need to know the difference of all kinds of governmental processes. Like we don't, as a people, we don't understand the difference between communist and socialist. We think socialist and fascist is the same thing. We don't understand the difference between oligarchical and democratic. We don't understand the difference between a democratic republic and a democrat. We don't understand when they say we don't have a democracy, we have a constitutional republic, or we don't have a democracy, we have a republic. Yeah, we have a republic, but it's a democratic republic. We have those people are really fun at parties, by the way. Our Constitution lays out a federal republic structure with a democratic basis for selecting our representatives. You know, our representatives are elected. They're voted into office by the people's votes. And it's an indirect vote because we vote for representatives to then cast a vote on our behalf. We vote for electors in the Electoral College who then go to elect a president based on our votes. Like they are legally prohibited in most states from casting a vote contrary to the affirmed vote, certified vote of the state from which they came, which is insane. Because it is truly possible that a state government could could reject the vote as unreliable. I mean, it really is. It's entirely possible that a state government could reject the popular vote as received from the precincts, declare it unreliable, and vote to cast a vote for electors that they see fit, that they decide to vote for. Woo. Highly unlikely, would be very unprecedented and very weird for that to happen, but not illegal. It would be unusual, but not illegal. In fact, that's exactly what they were trying to do. Some states, some senators were trying to get states to do in 2020, in the 2020 election, with their false, fake sets of slates of electors. Anyway, I think it would behoove us to know more about, not just who we are, but who we are in contrast to other systems, and why our system is preferred over other systems, and if our and what happens if our system breaks down. Because if our system breaks down, the closest we ever came to a communist revolution wasn't the 70s, it was the 30s, during the Great Depression, when 25% of the population was unemployed, and literally the economy failed because we ran out of money. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Like, there was just no money in the economy, and banks were failing and falling apart. And there was the closest we came, and even then it wasn't really close, but that's probably the closest we came to a communist revolution, where the workers were demanding that companies be socialized, nationalized rather, and that the people be given jobs. But the inoculation to that push for communism, that the inoculation for a communist revolution in the 1930s was actually socialism. Socialistic programs where the government actually directly hired workers, and put them to work literally digging holes and moving rocks. That's what the Civilian Conservation Corps was. The Civilian Conservation Corps was literally America's inoculation against communism and, well, not entirely fascism, but pretty close to fascism. We've always had a bit of a fascistic streak in our DNA, if you will. We were not far separated. That is a Whataburger commercial. That is a Whataburger commercial on my phone. We've always had a pretty thick fascistic streak in our DNA. You want to live in an intellectual country again? Yeah, I was talking to my sister-in-law when they were in town last week. And we both laughed. We both had a hearty laugh, because we both said, "I want to live in precedented times. I miss being in a world where there wasn't crisis after crisis. I want to live in precedented times again." And damn it, if a week later we weren't bombing the Middle East. I mean, that's not what we meant. When we said precedented times, we did not mean a war in the Middle East. We meant something else. Just, normal decency, respect for science, respect for intelligence, respect for literature. respect for the arts, not bombing the Middle East. But yeah, anyway. I mean, there wasn't a, we were, it's a very sobering reality when you learn that the Juden law that they established in Germany was based on our Jim Crow laws, that the South African apartheid laws was based on our Jim Crow laws. Like, these countries looked at us and said, yeah, that's a great idea. We could do, we're going to take it one step further, though. But yeah, that's a good start. Thanks, America, for blazing the path for us to be able to do what we want to do too. We have not always been a country that lived up to our ideals. And again, these ideals are ideals that we had prior to even being a country. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you talk to some of these people today, this is why I say we don't share common core American values. You talk to some of these people today, they do not believe that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. You say that, and they say, bullshit. All men don't have rights. Only citizens get rights. That's not the American ideal. And again, we have never lived up to the ideal that all men are endowed with certain unalienable rights and that all men yearn to breathe free, because we have been opposed to communism, but not opposed to dictatorship. We will wag our finger at you for ignoring human rights, but as long as you oppose the Soviet Union, we'll tolerate that shit. It's cool. Well, we won't do anything about it, but we'll give you a stern warning. Quit putting your people in jail. But also stability above all things, because that's why we were friendly with Saddam before we weren't friendly with Saddam. That's why we were friendly with Mossadegh, not Mossadegh. We put up with Mossadegh until he flirted with the communists, and then he wasn't acceptable anymore. We start threatening to nationalize oil companies and cozying up to the Soviets. We don't like that so much, and we will see to it that you die. And then we brought the Shah into power. And the Shah, I say Shaw like it's S-H-A-W, the Shah, S-H-A-H. He beat the piss out of his people, threw them in jail. He was a brutal dictator. But we were okay with that because he wasn't going to nationalize Aramco. He wasn't going to nationalize BP. He was going to let the companies do their work and not be communist, because to us, throughout the 50s, communism was a bigger problem than people disappearing off the streets. We never had a problem with that. We say we do, but the reality is there's a thick strain of ideology within our society that is perfectly fine with masked people kidnapping citizens off the street, if it means some of those citizens or some of the people that get kidnapped off the streets are also, bad guys. They're willing to tolerate a handful of good people getting arrested, as long as we make sure that all the bad people get arrested. Because God forbid you'll let a couple of bad guys walk the street because you're too afraid to arrest good guys. When historically speaking, we do not arrest innocent people if we know that they're not committing a crime. But at the same time, especially in the last 20 years or so, we've given powers to the police where All they got to do is ask for an ID, because if they are talking to you, they're in the middle of an investigation. And if you don't give them your ID, you're impeding an investigation. What are you investigating? Well, I'm investigating what this guy was doing on the street. Nobody ever has a problem with firefighters, because firefighters don't roam the streets looking for fires. Firefighters get called when there's a problem. But people have a problem with cops, especially when cops roam the streets looking for a problem. Nobody has a problem with the cops when you call the cops and the cops come and help. They have a problem with the cops when the cops come looking for a problem. Could you imagine minding your own business and you get a knock on the door? Hi, citizen. Just wanted to see if there were any crimes being committed. It's part of an investigation into crimes being committed in this neighborhood. Can I see your identification? No, you cannot see my identification. Well, now you're impeding an investigation. So I'm going to have to detain you and find out why you're acting suspicious. That seems pretty fucking un-American, doesn't it? And the reason why it seems un-American is because we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among them, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Are things quiet in Texas, or is it getting like LA? It is very much getting to be, it's quiet in Texas, but it's moving towards LA. The difference in LA, you have a Democratic governor that will actually stand up to the federal government. Here in Texas, we have Hot Wheels at it, who will literally do whatever the president wants them to do. So, yeah, no. You see no ads on my stream. Oh, that's fair. Most Dems are useless for this. Yeah, you're not going to catch me arguing that point. The Democratic Party is not rising to the occasion. I don't know what their deal is. I don't know why they're not. We need an opposition party, and they're not acting like one. They're trying to be a governing opposition, and of course there's not much they can do. They're iced out in the House of Representatives. They're iced out in the Senate, and the most they can do in the Senate is block things from happening. So there's not a lot they can do. So I don't know what it is we expect of them. I don't know what it is we expect them to do. You can't just impeach the president for nothing. Just because there's an impeachment article doesn't mean you can vote to impeach successfully. There's got to be some reason to do it, and you can't just send articles of impeachment to the Senate with no basis for the impeachment. I don't know what we expect necessarily, but it sure would be nice for them to do a little bit more to throw some sand into the gears. They're just not, it seems. And more, even worse than the Democratic Party being completely useless, the media is completely useless. They're not doing they don't seem to be doing their job of calling out the administration for what is, I mean, they're still obsessing over Joe Biden's health. Jesus Christ. Joe Biden, on a bad day, was a better president than what we got right now. I mean, sure, Joe Biden was old. Maybe he did have Alzheimer's. Maybe, I mean, if Joe Biden died in office, we would have Kamala Harris. And is there anyone in America who thinks that Kamala Harris would not be a better president, would not have been a better president? Kamala Harris taking over for Joe Biden would have been a better option than electing Donald fucking Trump. But no, oh no, Joe Biden's old. I don't care. The way our presidency works is if the president dies, the next person steps up. And now the next person is J.D. fucking Vance. They're eating the pets in St. Louis, dude. Like, fuck this shit. Do your fucking job, media. Anyway, things quiet in Texas. American citizens are getting caught up yeah, exactly. American citizens are absolutely getting caught in deportation raids because Stephen Miller has said we need 3,000 people, 3,000 arrests a day, or 15,000 arrests, whatever the number is. They have some arbitrary quota of arrests per day, and ICE is damn near a rogue agency. They're just trying to get body counts. They're not looking to arrest the people who need to be arrested. They're just looking to arrest people. They're looking to get the numbers. And going to Home Depot and arresting people out of the parking lot. And one of the dudes they arrested out of the parking lot of a Home Depot was a guy getting his PhD. He was just working side jobs. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Working side jobs to make some extra cash. And they fucking arrest a dude because he's brown. You kidding me? That's not the American way. That's not the America that I grew up in. That's not the America that we believe in. That is not in keeping with our core American values. What are our core American values? Say it with me, kids. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their creators with certain unalienable rights. They're not endowed by the government with rights. They're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. We establish governments in order to protect those rights and hand down the fruits of prosperity to our progeny for generations to come. That's the idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now this would be 12. That is what our founding documents tell us. That is what we're supposed to believe as a country. Our founding principles. The things that we believe as a people that establish our national ideology before we even had a country, before we had a government to protect those ideals and beliefs. We enumerated several of those rights in our Declaration of Independence, or not our Declaration of Independence, in our Constitution, in our Bill of Rights. We've enumerated several of those rights again since then. The right to vote shall not be infringed based on et cetera, et cetera. And we wouldn't have to have those amendments to the Constitution had those rights not been infringed by man. And in fact, the only beverage that you can consume, produce, and distribute in the United States that is protected by the Constitution is alcohol. Coca-Cola is not a protected beverage, but alcoholic beverages are 100% protected by the Constitution of the United States. Because the amendment prohibiting sale and distribution of alcohol, production, sale, and distribution of alcohol was appealed, or repealed, rather, making it constitutionally protected by writ. Ha 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 ha. You read the Trump administration was to axe dual citizenship holders. Huh. I don't have a problem with... I personally do not have a problem with saying you cannot hold dual citizenship in the United States. There's a lot of countries that don't allow dual citizenship. The United States historically has not been one of those countries, and there's a reason for that. Because we have historically had a very open and inviting immigration system, because we have historically been an open and inviting country. That has been part of our national DNA. We want people to come here. We want people to hold. Hell, Ted Cruz held dual citizenship until 2016. He was a Canadian citizen until he ran for president. True fucking story. Ted Cruz was running for president as a dual citizen of the United States and Canada until somebody asked about it, and he was like, oh, I don't know. And then he quietly went and changed his documentation, rescinded his Canadian citizenship. True fucking story. Ted Cruz is the worst kind of scumbag. God, he's just a fucking worm. Ugh. There's nothing about that guy that I like. He's just a doughy, pudgy little piece of shit who's made having a beard lame. That scraggly little beard. His stupid little MAGA beard. God, I hate that guy. He's just a smarmy piece of shit. And the staffers in his office, they're just as much pieces of shit as he is. They just don't fucking care. You call his office and you try to be cordial because they're not the evil ones. You know, they just work for the evil one. And you ask him, you're like, does he even care that his constituents don't think that a sitting senator of the United States, of the state of Texas, should express that his most important mission is to be a defender of Israel? Does he even care that we think he's the senator of Texas and that he should represent people from Texas? And they're like, oh, that's what you think, huh? Excuse me? Yes, I mean, he's not supposed to be the senator of Israel. Israel's not a state of the union, are they? Oh, well, I really don't think you understand. Do you really think he said that? Like, look here, bitch. Anyway, did I see the Cruz Carlson play? What? I have seen Governor Pritzker is quite the pugilist, and it's quite fun watching him. House Democrats vote to kill Al Green's impeachment measure. Even party leaders were against the Texas Democrats' Iran-focused resolution. Yeah, now is not the time. You don't just send impeachment papers. You usually only get one shot at an impeachment. You got to make it. You got to take your shot and make it count. And if you just have a resolution, you pass the resolution, you send the resolution out. There's a reason they did that. There's a reason the House leadership put it up for a vote. It's because they hadn't had hearings. There was no evidence gathered, no hearings. There was nothing. It was just dead fish thrown out on the table. There was no chance that impeachment was going forward. It was dead on arrival in the Senate. It was dead on arrival in the House. It wasn't going anywhere. I mean, I respect Al Green's effort to try and make an impeachment happen, but the reality is they got nothing to impeach him for yet. He hasn't broken any laws. Bombing Iran was not an impeachable offense. The President of the United States can direct the U.S. military to do whatever the fuck he wants it to do, with the exception of actions on American soil. The U.S. military cannot take action on American soil. But the U.S. military, you can go bomb whatever the fuck you want to bomb. There is no prohibition. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Army, of the U.S. Armed Forces, rather. And if the President wants to fly a mission around the world with a B-52 bomber and with a with a duck flying the jet, then the president can do that. Because the president is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces. And only the president can command forces. The president does not need permission to send ships, missiles, or whatever. He doesn't have to ask permission. The War Powers Act says he needs to consult, but that consultation can be as simple as an email. In bombing Iran, the president may have committed a very stupid act, but he did not commit an impeachable act. So, good for Al Green for drafting impeachment docs, but big fucking deal. There is no scenario where that is against the law, or where those impeachment articles were going anywhere at all. It was never going to happen. Tapes over there. When I read that there had been a vote on impeachment, I was like, for what? What the fuck? It's a waste of time. That is stupid and dumb. I mean, the Dems they could send impeachment articles every damn day of the week. God knows the Republicans kept doing it. The Republicans tried to impeach Obama like 1,000 times. They send him. Marjorie Taylor Greene would send impeachment articles for Joe Biden all the time. Why? For what? It's ridiculous and stupid. There's a way to be an opposition party, and that's not the way to do it. That's ridiculous and dumb. And I'm not going to ever get behind that, because that is just, I find it silly. It's silly, it's juvenile, and it's off-putting. There are reasons to impeach. There are plenty of reasons to impeach this dude. From emoluments, bribes, financial crimes, we can talk about that stuff all day long, and there should be hearings. And I mean, actual impeachment is a big deal. It's a real thing, and it deserves the gravity and respect and seriousness and sobriety that something that major and significant entails. You should have hearings. There should be charges. Articles of impeachment should come out of impeachment hearings. Hearings to impeach the President of the United States. There should be a sober and reasonable discussion. Do these crimes rise to the level of impeachable offense? There should be a debate. There should be a discussion. It shouldn't be a one and done vote in the middle of the night. It's just ridiculous. And honest to God, that shit just drives me nuts. To have, because it cheapens, like, when it actually happens, because it's gonna happen. It's absolutely gonna happen. There's abuse of power charges that you could level at the president. There's abuse of power. There's contempt of Congress. There's violation of the laws. Do the violation of the laws rise to an impeachable offense? That's a debatable question, because if he's impounding funds that have been set aside by Congress and not spending the money that Congress says he's supposed to spend. Is that an impeachable offense, or is it just really fucking annoying? Well, right now it's really annoying, but it's not an impeachable offense. What's the difference between a crime committed and an impeachable offense? That's a really good question, and it should be explored in congressional hearings. Will it be? Probably not. Certainly not with the Republicans in charge. It should absolutely be explored when the Democrats take control of the House next year. Or in 2020, at the end of 2026, the beginning of 2027. It should absolutely be explored. What is the difference between a crime and a high crime? Is it, if the president gets, runs a red light. That's a crime. It's a civil offense. It's a misdemeanor, whatever. It's a crime. The president runs a red light. Is that an impeachable offense? No. No reasonable person would say running a red light. Not that the president can. I know he has a motor pool. He drives in a caravan. He doesn't even fucking drive. President of the United States, once you become president of the United States, you never even touch a doorknob, much less drive. But at what point does a crime become a high crime? Because impeachment is reserved for high crimes and misdemeanors. So at what point does a presidential crime become a high crime? It's got to be somewhere between running a red light and shooting a person in cold blood, let's say. I mean, I think most people would agree that the president shooting somebody in the face would probably be an impeachable offense. I would think, right? I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I would hope most people would agree that. I also, as I say this out loud, I realize that there are absolutely people who would be like, well, I'm sure the president had a good reason to shoot the guy. Sure he did. Sure he did. Anyway, but that should absolutely be a discussion. That should be part of the debate anytime you impeach a president. Does this rise to an impeachable offense? And that was part of the debate the last two times this idiot was impeached. When he's when he's abusing his power, trying to get Zelensky to fabricate criminal documents on Hunter Biden and dig up dirt for the election in order to get military equipment. That is a plain case of abuse of power of the presidential office. I think reasonable people would also say that if you're a president of the United States and you're extorting foreign countries to give you gifts in order to extract trade concessions out of them, let's say that's a thing that happened. Let's say that you tell a country, hey, it would be awful if you got a 25% tariff put on you, but I sure could use a new airplane. I mean, I think reasonable people would say that might be considered a bribe. That might be considered solicitation of a bribe. Right? I think reasonable people could say that. If you want to talk about an impeachable offense, maybe that's an impeachable offense. Extorting foreign countries, that's one case. Extorting foreign countries for gifts in order to swap out American largesse. You know, the United States will sign, that's literally bribery. The United States will sign a deal with you if you give me a gift personally. Sure does sound like a bribe. Sure does sound like abuse of power. Sure does sound like a mobster type of thing. Nice country there. Nice trade balance you have there. Sure would hate for something to happen to it. Maybe that's an impeachable offense. Does that count as a high crime or misdemeanor? I don't know. That should be a discussion, I would think. I would think that should be a discussion to have. I know it's not a high crime or misdemeanor. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's not a high crime or misdemeanor, in my opinion, is ordering the U.S. military within the boundaries of your authority as president. Now, 1, 2, 3, that's 4 cases right there. Now, if he had told Iran, look, we're going to bomb you unless you buy Trump coin, his stupid fucking meme coin. I need to see $1 billion of my meme coin purchased by the end of this week, or we're going to bomb the shit out of you. $1 billion to me is a lot of money. $1 billion to you isn't. So make it happen, or we're bombing you. I think that would be a high crime. I think reasonable people would say that's an impeachable offense. And that's basically what he did to Zelensky in 2016, 2017, in his first impeachment. Like, you dig up election stuff for me, and then we'll make sure that the United States gives you the arms that you need to defend yourself. That was an impeachable offense. That was an impeachable offense then. It should be considered an impeachable offense now. But just ordering B-50 or B-2 bombers to go and bomb the shit out of something, that is, yeah, that's what presidents do. So, sorry, Al Green, Texas Democrat. Your impeachment effort was stupid. There are plenty of reasons to impeach that dude, but fulfilling his duties as president or exercising his authority as president within the boundaries of the law is not an impeachable offense. War does not go through Congress first. Sorry. I'm sorry. A declaration of war goes through Congress. But we have not had a declaration of war since 1942? Whenever they declared war on Japan and Germany. That was the last time we had a declaration of war. The War Powers Act exists, and that means that the president has to consult Congress, but the president has 90 days to consult Congress for an ongoing offensive operation. The president of the United States does not have to ask permission to send the military anywhere. And that is because, constitutionally, the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and the president can send the military anywhere he wants, anytime he wants, and asking Congress for permission to do so violates that authority. And can endanger the mission. Because if it gets into the press that the president is requesting Congress approve military buildup, whatever, then it becomes public knowledge, and it can endanger the actual mission at hand. Now, what the president has to do is ask for funds for an ongoing mission. And that is that's usually something like an enabling act or something along those lines. That was the vote the Iraq war vote that got Hillary Clinton in trouble and got so many Democrats in trouble back in 2005 or whenever. When Congress voted in favor of the Iraq war, what they were voting for is funding the war. And you will be hard-pressed to find a representative in Congress who will vote against the funding of military forces in an ongoing conflict. Because they absolutely could have, in Congress, absolutely could have, in 2005 said, not 2005, I got the wrong year, in 2000. No, it was '05. It was the second Iraq War when we declared that they had weapons of mass destruction that they didn't have and went to war on a false pretense. Congress absolutely could have said, we will not provide funding for this. You cannot do this. You do not have authorization for an ongoing combat mission. They could have. And then the Iraq War never would have happened. But they didn't. And the second Iraq War happened. But they could have. They could have said, we do not authorize this activity. We're not going to provide funding. Stop it. And then Bush would have been faced with withdrawing troops from Saudi Arabia, where they had been building up for 6 months, or for 3 months at the time, because it was like a 9-month buildup. It was a buildup to the point where it was beginning to damage our economy. So they basically had to go forward with the attack because they were literally pulling people out of jobs, activating reserves, and it was damaging our economy to the point where the only options were to go forward, because undoing all of that would have been a waste of money. As it is, he just decided to waste lives. Stephen Miller is a white supremacist. That is 100% true. Stephen Miller is a white supremacist. Read Trump administration acts dual citizenship. Yeah. Have I seen the Cruz Carl? I've seen clips of the Cruz Carlson interview, but I have not seen it. I haven't seen the whole interview. I do know that Ted Cruz is a smarmy piece of shit, and I love watching him be made to look like a fool. And I also know that Tucker Carlson respects Cruz about as much as I do. But we also need to remember that Tucker Carlson is not the good guy. They're just a couple of bad guys trying to bring each other down a peg. Tucker Carlson does not respect Ted Cruz at all. And for good reason, because Ted Cruz is a garbage person. If Ted Cruz's family had lived in California, Ted Cruz would be a hated Democratic senator. That's how unprincipled Ted Cruz is. Ted Cruz put his finger in the air when he was a kid growing up in Houston. He put his finger in the air and he realized that the Republican Party was going to be the party in power for the foreseeable future. He changed his name from Eduardo to Ted because he's white passing. So he changed his name to a more white name. And he ingratiated himself into the Republican power structure in Houston and worked his way up through the ranks in the state of Texas so that he could become the Solicitor General, where he argued in front of the Supreme Court that masturbation was not a human right. True story. He does not believe that people have the right to self-gratification. Or at least he didn't when he was making that argument, which means it's pretty safe to say he doesn't really believe anything. He'll say and do whatever he's paid to say or do. So, anytime somebody takes him down a peg, watching Tucker Carlson rip him a new asshole was the clips that I've seen of Tucker Carlson ripping him a new asshole is just absolutely delightful. Especially in light of the reality that he doesn't believe people should get self-gratification. Because Boy, watching him do that, that's some self-gratification, if you ask me. Dems did a wrong. Americans on the left are upset over it. Well, Americans on the left can be upset over whatever the fuck the Americans on the left want to be upset over. Americans on the left are upset over all kinds of stupid shit. But they weren't upset enough to get off their ass and go out and fucking vote. 7 million of them stayed home in the last election. So honestly, I don't really give a shit what the American left is upset over, because they could have been upset in November of last year, but they chose to stay home. So impeachment is not the solution. Voting in November was the solution, but they decided to stay home. So I don't give a shit if they're upset or not, because whether they're upset is not a determination of whether or not they're right or wrong. Because they could have avoided all of this by simply going out and voting, but they didn't. So cry a fucking river, if you ask me. We got a little leak going on in a filter over there, but nothing major, at least not yet. Keeping an eye on it, because we could spring a major gusher out the back in a minute. But yeah, I mean, you know, the people on the left, I don't give a shit what the people on the left say. They could have gotten out and voted. They didn't. So now they just, I mean, just because you didn't vote in November doesn't mean that you can sit back and expect Congress to do what you want them to do. If they'd have gone out and voted in November, they wouldn't be in this position where they have to impeach Donald Trump. If they'd have gotten out and voted in November, the House would be controlled by the Democrats, the presidency would be controlled by the Democrats, the Senate would be controlled by the Democrats. But they didn't. 7 million voters stayed home. 7 million. So, the people in the American left are upset. Tough shit. That doesn't change the fact that the president can order the U.S. military to do whatever the U.S. military, to do whatever the president wants them to do. It's in the Constitution. He didn't break any laws. At least not that. There are, like I said, there are plenty of other reasons, and there will be plenty of opportunities to impeach this son of a bitch. If the Senate had done its job in 2020 and 2021 and impeached him in 2021, we wouldn't be in this position. If the Senate had done its job, if the House and Senate had done their jobs in 2023 and passed immigration reform, we wouldn't be in this position. There would be a durable law preventing Donald Trump from doing what he's doing. But they didn't. You want to get upset over something? Get upset over the fact that your representatives, your senators, didn't get rid of the filibuster and pass the agenda that you sent them to the Senate to pass. They have not done their job in damn near 30 years. You want to get upset over something, don't get upset over an impeachment that shouldn't have ever made it to the floor for a vote to begin with, over dubious principles. That impeachment was not going to go anywhere. They weren't going to impeach him in the Senate. They weren't going to remove him in the Senate. There had been no debate whatsoever. No articles, no discussion, nothing. If you don't think they were going to, if you think that the people who did not vote to remove him after an insurrection were not going to, or were going to go ahead and vote to remove him after the commander-in-chief ordered the military to go do a thing, I mean, you're delusional. These are the same people who had to go to safe rooms in the Senate, go to safe rooms in the House of Representatives because a mob was breaking down the doors and literally trying to kill them, disrupt the proceedings of an official act of Congress. And they did not vote to impeach him then. They weren't going to vote to, or they didn't vote to remove him then. They weren't going to vote to remove him this time. Al Green, bravo for making a statement, for standing up and virtue signaling that the president should be impeached, but that was going nowhere. It wasn't going to happen. Americans don't see it. I disagree on the premise that Americans don't see it that way. Leftists don't see it that way. Americans on the left don't see it that way. But again, Americans on the left couldn't be bothered to go out and vote. So Americans on the left feathered their beds and can sleep in the mattresses they made. I mean, this is what they stayed home and didn't vote for. If they didn't want this, they should have gone out and fucking voted. And with that said, the caveat to that is that we have some very interesting data coming out of certain counties that suggest that the American people actually didn't vote for this after all. There's some very statistically curious anomalies in the data that I am watching closely because it is, at the very, very least, fascinating. At the very, very most, terrifying. Oh, we sprung a leak. We sprung a leak. All right, I've got to do some triage work here because I've still got to finish filtering this stuff. And I'm out of filter pads. That's filtered. So go in there. So I'm going to open this up, try and get these pads to be a little realigned, I think. Close it back up. And don't get me wrong, I want to see this guy serve time for his crimes. But it's got to be done right. You know, you can't just impeach someone for nothing. Like, there's got to be a crime committed. It can't just be because we don't like what he did. I mean, I don't like what he did. I think there's probably better ways to solve this issue with Iran than bombing them. And the information coming back from this is suggesting that these bombing runs weren't very effective. Well, I think we're done filtering for now because I think these filter pads are pretty much shot. Which is problematic because we're not done filtering the batch. I want to see him serve time. I want to see him arrested, charged under the Espionage Act, charged under Uh, the Records Act, charged under the emoluments clauses, charged. I want to see him charged for his fucking crimes. I don't want it to be, he's not in office anymore. What's the point of prosecuting him? The point of prosecuting is he did fucking crimes. If he did crimes, he should be charged for the crimes and prosecuted for the crimes. That's the point, that nobody's above the law. But they should be actual crimes, not silly bullshit nonsense. Whoa! Because, we're not happy with what he did. We didn't want him to bomb Iran. Yeah, nobody wants him to bomb Iran, but, I don't want him to be president. I'd rather him not be president. Okay, this is not great. This is actually kind of bad, but I've got to get this done with these filter pads. Like, I don't really have a choice, but I don't have a lot left in here to kind of run it through. So I've just got to do what I can to get this stuff done. I've got a knife trying to do it. I just don't think it ever had a chance of going anywhere. And I really wish they would have waited until they had a real impeachable offense to go for and not just tried to shoot their shot with the first chance they got. That's not the one. This one. We still have a good flow coming out. The pressure's really high inside the machine, which is bothersome. Is part of the reason why we sprung a leak on the side of the filter there. But anyway, but like, as I said, reasonable people on this sort of thing can disagree. This is something that reasonable people can disagree with. What reasonable people can't disagree on is whether or not people should be arrested without due process, whether or not freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, freedom to bear arms, freedom to be secure in your domicile without fear of government agents searching and seizing your assets and your property. The right to face your accusers, that the capricious nature of arresting people willy-nilly because they look like an immigrant. Like, that's not, reasonable people can't disagree on that. That cuts at basic core American values. Core American values. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And we recognize several of these rights on the baseline, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then we go on to enumerate those rights in our Constitution. We have the freedom of speech and religion and assembly and press and the right to privacy, which is inherent in the Constitution, despite what the Supreme Court has said in modern retellings of American history. That which is done behind closed doors is not subject to that which is done behind closed doors and on private property is not subject to federal regulation, accepting, of course, that it is that all people that it is available to all people regardless of race, creed, age, or gender, sex. You know, oftentimes though they don't have a problem with private entities being exclusionary, but they do have a problem with private entities. Legally, you can exclude black people and Asians and even white people from your clubs. Legally speaking, I think that's been held true, that private clubs can discriminate on race. They don't like it, but I think that they have held that private clubs can discriminate on race. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ugh. Yeah, we're leaking all over the place on this thing now, but there's not much left. I can see the bottom. You just got to get through, little buddy. Then you can rest all week. All right, where are we at? Bing bong. Buy me some dinner first. Bing bong. That video cracks me up. All right, what time even is it? 8:35. Well, I should be done in about 45 minutes, give or take. I only need to do 4 cases of these. Special reserve, 4 cases. Yep. And this is 5, so I'll have an extra case in the tasting room in there. All right, so what else are we going to talk about? I mean, I hope, like, I get passionate about this stuff because I really want my kids to grow up in a country better than the country I grew up in. I think I grew up in a country that was better than the country my parents grew up in. I think my parents grew up in a country that was better than the country they grew up in. And I think in the long arc of history, I will ultimately hand over to my kids a country that was better than the country I grew up in. But I would really hate for my kids to be living in a country where they're fighting the same fights that my parents fought when I was a kid, that I fought when they were kids, and then they go on to fight the same damn fights. You know, I would like for there to be like one problem from the last 50 years that got solved. Whether it's universal health care, universal insurance for people, you know, just one problem that got solved. I think that would be great. But that's like one of those things that you can only do it if we share core common values. If we don't share core values, then it's hard to even recognize that we have a problem. You know? Because if you don't think that all men are created equal, then you don't think that everybody everybody deserves health care. If you don't think that all men are created equal, then you don't think there we go, back over here. If you don't think all men are created equal, then you don't think that all kids deserve to have school lunches. If you don't think that all men are created equal, hell, if you don't think all men are created equal, you don't even think all kids deserve to be educated. Because not all kids deserve education if all kids aren't equal. If some kids are more equal than others, then not all kids deserve an education. Only the most wealthy among us who can afford an education deserve an education. So why have a Department of Education that evens out the funding between school districts and between states? Because, let the states deal with it. Because some kids just don't deserve it. If you grow up in Nebraska, you don't deserve to have the kind of education that they have in New York, because New Yorkers are wealthier than Nebraskans. So kids in Nebraska, they're less equal, because you don't share the core American value that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. This is a foundational principle. I keep saying this because I believe it to be true. It is a foundational principle upon which our nation was built. If we don't believe, and of course, we haven't always lived up to that ideal. That's not the point. We aspire to live out that ideal. That is our goal as a nation, to live up to the principles that we lay out for us to achieve. Because, for 400 some years, we firmly believed that some of our people weren't even people. And they didn't even deserve to be citizens. We had to pass an amendment to our Constitution to ensure that they were, and that everybody else who was born here is a citizen. These are core American principles. If you don't believe at its baseline that one principle, then nothing else can be solved. School funding, health insurance, hell, the basic social safety net, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You can go down a whole list of social programs that no longer apply because you don't believe people are equal, that all men are created equal, and that all men are endowed with certain rights. If you don't think that all men, or that all people deserve to live, then Social Security isn't a big deal. Just let old people die when they run out of money. Fuck them. Who cares? If you're not good enough to have enough money, then you aren't equal enough to be worried about. All men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights. I keep going back to that because that is the core ideal that our country was based on. That was an ideal set forth before we even had a country. All men are created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident. Self-evident. It doesn't even have to be said. And yet we say it in our foundational document. The document where we told King George, hey, that you're wrong and here's why. Because we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And this is what you've done to violate those rights, King George. Why, item by item, why you a bitch. He has quartered troops. He has deprived us of our papers. He has, it just goes down the damn list. And I love that our founders in their wisdom, before they said, yeah, we'll ratify this, they said, we'll ratify it, except that you've got to add this Bill of Rights. Otherwise, who's to say in the years to come, who's to say in the years to come that our own government won't do the same thing to us that George did to cause this separation in the first place? That there were at least some voices among, I put 2 shrink wraps on this one. There were at least some voices that had the forethought to say, we need to restrain this new government, because at some point in the future life of this government, the urge to do the same things will be there. And we're seeing that now, 225 years after the founding of our country, or very nearly 225 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. 250 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. 225 years after the establishment, or 250 years after the establishment, anyway. 250 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, we are seeing that very authoritarian strain wind its way through our government. Not because it was poorly formed, but because the civic muscle has atrophied among the people, but also the civic muscle has atrophied among our own governing entities. Congress doesn't do its fucking job. Congress does. When was the last time, before Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, when was the last time significant legislation was passed? The American, the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, that was significant legislation. Joe Biden had several significant legislative victories. He had the CHIPS Act. He had the CHIPS Act, the one that was the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure thing. He had the one where it was the for the soldiers, and the soldiers with the cancer, the Iraq War Syndrome guys. That was passed, and there was 2 others that are evading me at the moment. He held firm. Like, he had a few legislative achievements. And other than the Affordable Care Act, I can't think of much that Obama passed, but I wasn't paying very close attention back then. So I can't think of a whole lot of legislative achievements. I mean, he did pull the, literally pulled the economy. TARP and TARF and TANF and TINF. And he had several legislative victories when it came to pulling the economy out of the ditch, as he says. I'm probably going to be done with this by 10 o'clock. So we're going to call it. I'm going to call the show over at 10 o'clock. Maybe I'll do an official happy hour. Fire up the restream. Have a panel show tonight. I'm tired though. I've been talking for, how long has this been on? 3 hours? 4 hours? What time is it? How long have we been going? This show's been going for 2.5 hours. I've been talking for 2.5 hours. My voice is getting a little raspy. But whatever, content's content. Y'all get to see me work, see what happens behind the scenes at a distillery, at a small craft distillery. This is how we do it. Everything's by hand, everything's small batch, everything's a little bit at a time. Sometimes we got to get out and push the equipment to do the things that it's supposed to do. But it's always a labor of love, and eventually it's going to be a labor of money. I'm not doing this to not make money. It is a business. And I do believe in my country. I'm proud of my country. Even when my country doesn't live up to its ideals, I think if anyone can, my country can. Ooh, I've got an advertisement. Who's this? Google Chrome. Google Chrome. It's a skippable ad, but I'm not going to skip it because I want the revenue. I want the revenue. And this one is Go Green, Tidal Wave Auto Spa. Tidal Wave Auto Spa. Thank you, Tidal Wave Auto Spa, for advertising in the Old Humble Distilling Company's happy hour and Patriot Report. It's dark outside. It's 8:30, 9:30. What time is it? 8:45. It's after 8:30, which means it's after sunset. My son, speaking of sunset, my son is going to post up in a fireworks stand Friday. He's gonna do the week-long camp out that I've done a few times. I worry for him because he's 19 and he's going to be in a fireworks stand all day long, pretty much by himself. He's going to have some people come out and hang out with him, but he's going to be pretty much by himself. He's going to have a lot of work to do. He's going to have to do his work. What the fuck is wrong with you guys? Back to YouTube. Skip the fucking ad. But I worry about him because he's going to be in a parking lot attached to another business. And he's going to have a lot of foot traffic, but he's also 19. So I worry about him. He's going to do fine. That part I'm not worried about. And most people are pretty supportive. He's trying to raise money earn some money for his January term trip to Japan. All expenses paid, school-funded trip. Well, it's not a school-funded trip. He's got to pay the tuition for the January term, or pay the expenses associated with it. He's going to Japan for cultural immersion and study abroad. So he's going to learn Japanese culture, cultural immersion in Japanese culture. History, mythology, et cetera, language, culture, all the stuff. He's very excited. I'm very excited for him, but it's like a $1,000 trip. So he's got to raise up some cash. I've got to sell some whiskey. He's probably going to have to sell some plasma. I may sell some plasma too. $7,000. I mean, his normal Jan terms are free because they're at school, but this one's a study abroad opportunity for him to actually be able to go overseas and explore a whole new culture. So it's very exciting. And he's going to be working at the fireworks stand, doing the thing, selling explosives for America. USA, USA. I think after he's done with the fireworks stand on New Year's or Independence Day, I'm going to take him here to the shop and we'll light off some fireworks so we can celebrate America's birthday on my favorite civic holiday ever. It really is my favorite. It is the first American holiday, and it is the embodiment when we laid out our core American values and established a country. Before our country was even established, we established the ideal, the rock, if you will, the foundation for which we were going to have a country. And it doesn't get more American than that. It is everything. The values of July 4th is everything I love about my country. It's standing up to um, a governing power, establishing and defending our rights as a people, our ideals as a people, setting forth on this continent the parameters of which our country would be built, or by which our country would be built, telling the king, like, we don't know what we're going to do, but we're not going to keep doing that. So just so you know, we're out. George didn't like it. Wouldn't expect him to. But he didn't have to. He wasn't being asked to like it. He was just being told where he could stick it. And then the colonial Congress decided to tell him where to stick it and proceeded to help him stick it there. I love July 4th. And the thing is, if it weren't for the men with pins, we wouldn't have July 4th. But then it was the men with guns that made sure that it wasn't merely treason. And the ideals of our Declaration of Independence have been used again and again when countries have decided they're going to declare independence from their colonial powers or dissolve their Congress and establish a new country, or like the principles in our Declaration of Independence have been repeated again and again and again and again. And how can you not have a little bit of pride about that? That's pretty fucking baller, if you ask me. I love it. I love Independence Day. It really is a great holiday. And I dare say it's the greatest American holiday ever. That's how much I love Independence Day. That's how much I believe in Independence Day. That I think it's the greatest American holiday of them all. I mean, without it, we don't have a country. Literally, but also figuratively. Because we could have skipped independence, the Declaration of Independence. We could have skipped the justification for our rebellion against Britain. We could have skipped the justification. We didn't have to justify among world powers why we were declaring our independence and rebelling against England. We didn't have to. We didn't have to write this document down and send it to France and Germany and whomever else. Mostly France and Spain, but mostly France. We didn't have to. We could have had our just diplomats say, "Yeah, we're seeking to form a new country," but the Declaration of Independence kind of codified it so that all the diplomats were on the same page at the same time. So that's cool. That helped. But it was also a justification to the colonists, the people in the colony. It wasn't just a justification to the powers of the world, saying we're stepping out from Britain's shadow and taking our station among the great powers of the world, but it was an explanation to the governors, the colonists, the fellow colonists, the other people in the various colonies, to say, this is why we're doing this thing. And we want y'all to understand that we're not just doing this because it's one guy's petty feud against another guy or whatever. Like, it wasn't just Hamilton or just Washington or just Madison who was offended by King George. Like, this is a whole list of grievances. And we're asking for your support, fellow colonists, to fight with us, because it's not just us who are being offended, but also you, fellow colonists, who are being offended and put upon by the crown. So you, fellow colonists, join us in this fight. The Declaration of Independence was as much a rallying cry to the fellow colonists as it was a justification to the other powers of the earth, European powers especially France, and also Spain. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's what I love about it so much. And why it is such an important civic holiday, because it wasn't just a governmental document. It wasn't just an interdepartmental memo or whatever. This was a rallying cry to the people. This was very much a people-powered revolution or reform, rebellion, if you will. It wasn't just the aristocracy fighting against the aristocracy. This was, the Minutemen standing up, and there being a gunman behind every bush, behind every tree, under every bridge. The British were not going to be able to continue to harass and I hate to say oppress, but harass and put upon the colonists anymore. And that's what the Declaration was saying. Not simply, hey, France, this is why we're declaring, this is why we're separating from the crown, but also, hey, Thomas Smith in North Carolina, this is why we're separating from the crown. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're not just doing this lightly. We're doing this because we're fed up with their shit, and you should also be fed up with their shit. And as they read the Declaration of Independence in town squares, on corners, in front of city halls and colonial capitals and church patios and at pulpits, during sermons, wherever it was read, the people reading it were telling the people listening, these are not simply offenses against the various states. These are offenses against the people of the colonies. These are offenses against the colonists themselves. They did this to us. They did this to you. They did this to me. Because ultimately speaking, when one merchant's goods are seized by the crown, every merchant's goods are at risk of being seized by the crown. If one person is detained without due process, then every person is at risk of being detained without due process and taken overseas to a foreign jail and held prisoner pending a trial that may never come because they never get to face their accused. Because a basic principle of our country is that all men are created equal. It was such a basic principle that the founders said it's self-evident. 5, 6, 7, 8. It doesn't have to be said out loud. It's self-evident. But here we go. We're going to say it out loud. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And it's becoming increasingly obvious in this day and age that there are people among us who do not share these basic ideals. They harbor un-American core values. Because at the foundation of their value system is that all men are not inherently equal, and all men do not possess inherent rights from their Creator. That's a problem. That is a problem. Because as I was saying earlier, if we do not hold this basic core value to be true, that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights, among them life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. If we do not believe that to be true, then all kids do not deserve a public education. All people do not deserve health care. As Ron Paul would say, well, just die. Because that's the libertarian response. If you can't get health care, then you just die. Someone will take it. Someone will fill the gap. And if they don't, then you just die. He literally did that on stage. Just shrugged his shoulders. And I find that to be despicable, un-American. And I don't mean that glibly. I mean it with a very heavy very heavy inflection and belief. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is. Very heavy intent. Yeah, with very heavy intent that they hold un-American values. The values, their basic core values are un-American, not fitting with the America that our founders laid forth on this great continent, that it was the country we grew up in, that was the country our grandparents fought to preserve and protect in World War II. It's not the country that protected itself from a communist revolution in the 1930s. Those values are not the America that we grew up with. And it's very troublesome. Because the America that envisions is more like the America that we fought against in the 1950s and 1960s. Because in the 1950s and 1960s, the America that we all lived, well, we didn't live in, but the America that existed in the 50s and 60s was absolutely an America that did not believe all men were created equal. It was an America that believed some men should keep their head down and know their place. This was the America from the 1870s forward that existed for 80-something years. An America where if you if you had the wrong color skin and you stuck your head up too high, you'd get it knocked down. You might end up having it in a noose. You needed to know your place. Because all men weren't created equal. Some men were more equal than others. Some men were good, and some men were not. And if you made the great sin of becoming too prosperous, then mobs of men would get together and see to it that you weren't prosperous anymore. There's a reason that lynchings and race massacres happened up and down the Mississippi River and to the east, and not so much west of the Rocky Mountains. But that's a whole nother discussion. God damn, I'm getting hungry. It's getting time for dinner. All right, that's one case. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Almost one case. All I need is 3 cases. But, I'm sorry, 4 cases. But they're coming at 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'll probably go ahead and do them all. It's 9:09. I'll be done. Yeah, I'll be done by 10 o'clock. I'll be done by 9:30. And that's troublesome. Because like I said, I would like to hand off a country. I want to hand off a world to my kids that's better than the world I grew up in. And, you know, if you got masked goons kidnapping people off the streets because they're brown or not white enough and might be immigrants, that is not a country. That's not the country I grew up in, and that's not a country that's better than the country I grew up in. That's a country that is grossly worse off than the country I grew up in, and that's the kind of country that my grandfather fought against. That's the kind of country that my grandfather bombarded from the English Channel. Because that is not the kind of country that we as Americans believe America should be. Because the country America should be, as laid forth in our founding documents before we even had a country, is a country that believes all men are created equal. And that our rights are not given to us by the government, but they are endowed to us by our Creator. The government protects them. That's why governments are created. Governments are established to govern and protect rights. Governments are not established to take rights or infringe rights. Governments are established to protect rights. And now, sometimes protecting of rights means infringing on others, and there has to be a balance, because maybe the protection of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness means a restriction of who can own guns. Because let's face it, every single one of us who owns guns knows someone else who owns guns who should not own guns. You know who he is. You know the guy. Everyone knows a guy. You've already pictured him in your mind. You know who he is. I know my guy. He used to live around the corner from me. He was from Indiana. Had an Indiana Colts themed garage, and about, in his words, 37 guns, pistols, rifles, and high caliber semi-automatic rifles. I was like, what the hell you need all that shit for, man? We live in the suburbs of Houston. He's like, you never know when shit's going to go down. I'm like, well, I know when shit goes down, you're probably going to be involved in it. And then we started talking about football. Needless to say, I knew whose house I was looting during the apocalypse because he had all the weapons and ammo. And I'm pretty sure he had a um, prepper shed too with bulk size of food. So what I need to do in the morning is run by Office Depot, print out my labels for the boxes, because I've got box labels, but I don't think I have enough labels for the special reserve. I'm not sure I have 3 labels. Let's see what I got. I need 5 labels of straight whiskey. I know I'm off camera. 1, 2. I have 3 labels of straight whiskey. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 labels of special reserve, and 1, 2, 3, 4 labels for the double oak. So all I got to do is go to the store. I got to run down to Office Depot and print up some labels for the for the straight whiskey. That's all I got to do. And I only need 2 of those labels. But what I'll do, I may just print 2 labels. I may not print more than I need because, where's my, there it is. Simply because I've only got so much time on my hands. You know what I mean? So, we shall see. That's what I need to do in the morning. I've got stuff and then I come back here, slap those labels on the boxes. And then by 10 o'clock, the dude's going to be here, pick them up, and then that's their 3rd pickup of the month. They didn't pick up nearly enough product. I didn't sell enough product for them to pick up enough product. I sold about half as much as I wanted to sell this month. But that gives me goals for next month. Need to get me a spreadsheet and start tracking the deliveries as they go out. I'm gonna have to buy more product and get it or as soon as got a little financing coming. As soon as that comes, I'll be able to turn around, pay off a couple of invoices, fire up a couple new invoices, purchase orders rather. My feet. Been on my feet too damn long. Final stretch. Last 8 or 9 bottles. 9 bottles. 8. 7. 6. Where are we at? 9:17. We're going to have this wrapped up by 9:30. I love it. I'll go ahead and box these up too. Yeah. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Zero. All right. That is half a year's production done. Half a year's production. Well, the end of a half a year's worth of production. Most of our sales this year have gone through our tasting room, which is exactly the strategy that I've been trying to employ, increasing sales through the tasting room to increase overall revenue of the distillery. That sounds like such fucking nerd talk. We need to increase the revenue through the distillery by focusing sales in a targeted manner with the most synergistic processes of cross sales and promotional materials. What we're hoping to do ultimately is develop synergistic cross-channel opportunities with multiple segmented portions of the economy so that we can then leverage faster growth and develop multiple complementary revenue streams. Next slide. Business school nerd talk. I still got it. That's for sure. 2, 3, 4. I have 4 cases. The 5th case goes into the tasting room. Well, it's probably really loud in this microphone, isn't it? Sorry about that. So I guess I should give the opportunity for y'all to ask me anything while I'm on for the last 15, 20 minutes. I mean, I'm hopeful for America, and I love talking to our fellow patriots who also love America and want to see great things happen for our country. I'm very hopeful for the next generation that they will solve the problems that we've handed off to them, and very disappointed in my generation that we've handed off all these fucking problems. I mean, there's unfortunately, very little daylight between the governing class of Gen X and the boomers. Of course, the boomers are still in power, and Gen X really isn't taking their place. It's almost like we've been waiting for the next generation after us to be able to do anything, because we can't. There's not enough of us to do anything in light of the boomers being where they're at and clinging to power for as long as they have. You know, it's like, what the hell are we going to do? There's only so much we can do. We're the smallest cohort of all the population cohorts. What the fuck you want us to do? Our battle cry of a generation is, whatever! We want to be left alone. When do we want it? Quit bothering me. What do we want? Leave us alone. When do we want it? Quit asking questions. God! Shut up already. The battle cry of Gen X. Why haven't y'all done more? Whatever. Leave us the fuck alone. It's a fair question, though. You know, why haven't we done more? But it's also a pretty shitty question for generations of people who don't fucking show up and don't fucking do anything to ask. Why haven't we done more? 7 million of you morons stayed home last election. Fuck off. Ask me stupid questions. And I won't tell you no lies. Alright. These 12 go into the other room. Oh, it's cold in here. I love having an air conditioner now. In our tasting room, didn't have an air conditioner before. I'll be able to film content from there. Cocktails are good, specialty cocktails. I do all kinds of stuff now. And I don't mind doing it because I'm not going to be a sweaty mess. I gotta get up, go to Home Depot, or Office Depot. Grab those labels, put them over there with stuff. In the other room. Cameras remotely. That'd be kind of cool. $9:26. 30 more minutes that I can do stuff before I have to shut it down. Before I want to shut it down. 1, 2. So what I'm going to do is y'all see the last process, or the last step in this process. I'll get the box labels. Put those into the boxes where they belong. Because I mean, I'm here tonight. If I don't do it tonight, I got to do it in the morning. And I'm still here tonight. I'm still doing the work tonight. I might as well fucking do the work, right? Right. These are all special reserve boxes. So, boom. Special reserve label is right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 labels of special reserve. Daddy? I don't know why that makes me laugh so fucking much. There's this dude who's got a series of videos, conversations with a 3-year-old, conversations with a 4-year-old, basically conversations with his kid. And the toddler, I think a 4-year-old is a toddler. Maybe it's a step above toddler, whatever the child is at that age. I don't know if a 4-year-old's considered a toddler still. Regardless. He talks like this, and he calls his daddy, Daddy. He says things like, Daddy, I want you to know that my chicken nuggets are not hot enough. And he's like, all right, I'll heat up your chicken nuggets. And he gives it to him and says, Daddy, you should know that my chicken nuggets are now too hot. Now we're not eating. And he's like, don't you throw them on the ground. And I'm going to throw them on the ground. Don't you throw them on the ground. He throws them on the ground. You should have done better, Daddy. And I can't help but think that the kid sounds like George W. Bush. And that may have been intentional, but it is just so damn funny to imagine former President George W. Bush as a 4-year-old talking to the United Nations. I would like you to be on notice, United Nations. I am going to go to war with Iraq. Don't you do that, Iraq is going to be in trouble forever. Straight rye. 1, 2, 3 labels of straight rye. Straight rye whiskey. 3 boxes right there. And once I'm done with that, I'm done. Because I've got to get more labels for the straight whiskey. I've got to get two more sets of labels for the straight whiskey. I've got 3 labels in the box. I need to get 2 more. And that, my friends, is how the whiskey man spends his Wednesday nights. By bottling up and boxing up whiskey. Because whiskey never sleeps. And whiskey. We're going to do a dramatic reading one night, I don't know when, but one night I will do a dramatic reading of my new book, The Epic Journey of the Old Humble Guy in his quest for the perfect pour. It is a book that is available on Amazon Prime, and it is free if you have the Kindle Prime subscription. It is a free download with your Kindle Prime subscription. So go out and buy that fucking book. The Old Humble Guy's Epic Journey, or the Epic Journey of the Old Humble Guy. Journey, the Old Humble Guy, in his quest for the perfect pour. It is the legendary origins of the Old Humble Distilling Company, entirely based on a mostly true story, as told by a man in a bar after several drinks. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers, sisters, children of all ages, it is time for me to call it a night. Sunflowers, you're Gen X. I know you're Gen X. I'm Gen X too, sweetheart. Battle cry of a generation. Whatever! What do we want? Leave us alone. When do we want it? Quit asking questions. This has been fun. I like talking about America. I like talking about our shared values and ideas and ideals. It really has been fun. I like going into hostile territory and talking with people who do not share core American ideals and trying to share those core American ideals. But it's becoming increasingly hard because it is increasingly evident that they do not share those core American ideals. And they aggressively don't share them. So it's tough. It's a challenge. But nonetheless, I am who I am, and I know what I believe, and I know what I believe in. So it's really hard to not lean on those ideas and ideals. Nonetheless, I am a whiskey man first. I'm an American first. I'm a whiskey man second. And I love my country and I love my whiskey. Y'all continue to be awesome to each other. Raise a glass and celebrate what you have succeeded in doing and what you hope to become. I am the Old Humble Guy. This is the Old Humble Distilling Company, and I am signing off. Cheers and good night.